Hey there, and welcome to my channel where we discuss all the tips and tricks necessary for you to live a life of adventure. Have you ever wondered how people get started hiking with their dogs? Maybe you just got a new puppy, or you've had a dog for a while, but you keep seeing pictures of people having epic adventures with their dog on Instagram and are wondering how they do it. Well, I remember when I first started hiking with my own dogs 6 years ago when I was in college. I would just get in my car, go for a random drive, pick a trailhead on the side of the road and start walking. Honestly, I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but fortunately, 28 states, 22 14ers, and thousands of miles later, I've learned a thing or two. To help shorten the learning curve so you can have more fun with your dog a lot sooner, I'm going to share all the tips and tricks I wish I knew when I was getting started. Now, I do want to say this is kind of like the light version, even though it's going to be a fairly long video, because I don't really want to go super in depth about all of these different topics. Instead, I'm going to be making different videos that go over each topic individually. So if you want to see those videos, be sure to subscribe my channel so that way you can be the first to know when they come out. So my first tip is to consider what sort of hiking you're looking to do with your dog. You know, some people are perfectly happy just going out for 1 to 2 hour walks in the local park, getting in the woods and spending some thinking time with their dogs. Other people want to go on super big adventures, like climbing peaks, doing long backpacking and that kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with either. There's nothing better or worse about either one. Personally, I do all of the above with my dogs, but if you are only thinking that you're going to do one, then that's going to kind of direct what sorts of things you bring with your dog, what sort of training you do, how, the more serious you are about doing bigger trips, then there's some extra things that you will need to think about essentially. So just kind of keep that in mind. Of course you can change, like I just said, I do all of the above and I started out with smaller hikes and have built up over time. But it's just kind of something helpful to think of so that way you can make sure that your dog is going to be happy doing it with you because they're suited to the kind of activity that you're looking to do. Which brings me into tip number 2, in considering what breed of dog you have and if they're going to be happy hiking the kind of trails that you want to hike. So for example, the first thing really to think about is their age. My dogs are both 8 currently, which is starting to get on the older side, but they still have quite a few years left, especially Skittles, my terrier, just because she's smaller. But if you have a young puppy, then you might want to consider talking to your vet to make sure that the number of miles you're hiking are appropriate for your dog, and that they don't have any other problems or congenital diseases that you need to think about. The reason why I say this is that puppies that are, say, like 3 or 4 months old, their bones aren't done growing yet. So they have a lot of space left between their bones within their joints, and they also have this part along the top of their bones where they're growing, where if that gets injured because of high impact activities like hiking, that can cause significant and serious injuries down the road, so they won't be able to hike with you when they're older. So it's kind of better to think about the long game if you have a puppy, and take it slow to start off. And know that if you wait a couple years, that once they hit 2 or 3, they'll be a wonderful hiking companion and be able to go everywhere with you because you waited instead of pushing it when they were young. But again, talk to your vet. It'll depend a little bit on the dog, the area where you're hiking, and what exactly you're planning on doing. The same goes with older dogs. So I said that my dogs are both 8. Technically, most vets say that once a dog is 7, they're considered a senior. It really depends on the individual dog. That's much more true of large breeds, especially giant breeds like Great Danes, maybe even like Bernese mountain dogs, that kind of thing. And less true of small dogs like terriers, like Skittles, who really won't start slowing down until she hits more like 12 or 13. My family has a terrier that's 14 and he really hasn't started slowing down significantly until the last year or 2. I was still doing lots of hikes with him when he was 10. So it just depends. And again, if you're not sure, talk to your vet. But, as dogs get older, they start getting arthritis. It starts getting harder for them. And that's not to say they can't hike. Obviously, there's plenty of older people that go out and hike too. You just want to be considerate and make sure that it's right for them and that they're still going to have a good time. And that you're not going to end up stuck somewhere because they laid down on the trail and decided they didn't want to move anymore. So just take that into consideration. The second thing with that is your dog's breed or their original purpose. Now this is going to vary from dog to dog and a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a second, as well as like your rescues and your mixed breeds versus your purebred dogs. So obviously with purebreds, it's a bit more straightforward. There's a long history behind those dogs as as to what they were bred to do originally, whether it was to herd sheep, you know, work with policemen, be guard dogs, hunt rats, or to sit on the laps of royalty and look cute and fluffy. You know, you want to take those into consideration. That's not a make or break by any means, but if you know what breed of dog you have, it would behoove you to do some research into what they're bred to do. If they're meant to be on their feet all day, every day working, then they're probably going to be well suited to hiking. I will be going much more in depth into this topic for sure, so be sure to check out that video once it's posted. But for now, just kind of start ruminating on that. You know, make sure that not only is your dog well suited to hiking, but if you're looking on buying a new dog, that's also well suited to your life when you're not hiking. And same goes with a rescue. You know, usually you can kind of figure what mixes might be in there, unless it's like a super mutt. And whatever rescue you get your dog from or you got them from in the past, you can hopefully find out their energy level, that kind of thing, what kind of breeds they're made up of, that they might be predisposed to different activities. You can also talk to your vet if you're not sure. They should be able to help you. So along with that, I'm going to talk about fitness level further down, but you want to think about how fit your dog is. Are you doing other activities? Like, do you do agility or herding or anything else with your dog? Or have they just been hanging out on the couch before you're getting started? You want to take that into account when you're starting to hike with your dog. And the last thing really is personality. So just because your dog is a certain breed or comes from a certain background doesn't mean that they're going to have the personality to enjoy doing certain things on the trail. Most dogs enjoy going for some sort of hike, but like, for example, my cousin has a basset hound, and while many basset hounds are pretty athletic, hers really only enjoys going for a 1 to 2 mile walk, so she might enjoy just shorter hikes that are, you know, like half a day kind of thing. Whereas other dogs are, you know, they want to be out and doing something, whether it's like a small dog that maybe doesn't come from a background that's done a lot of work, or, you know, it's a high energy breed like a Malinois or something. Those dogs want to be out and about, and that's what makes them really tick and is happy. So you can go ahead and do lots of different big adventures with that kind of dog. So just kind of take that into consideration. Another good example are greyhounds, where they're very fast, and there's lots of greyhounds that like to get out and do stuff, and they obviously had a working background, but there's a lot that are honestly just happy to do a couple laps around the backyard and then come inside. So just something to think about. So question of the day, what kind of dog do you have? You know, do you already have a dog currently? Are you looking to get a certain kind of dog? I'd love to hear what kind of companion you're hiking with. So be sure to let me know down in the comments what kind of breed of dog you have. It's always interesting to see, and I wish we could post pictures, but you know, maybe link your Instagram too if you have a dog Instagram, so I can go check that out. We love seeing different dogs that are out hiking and having a good time. All right, so on to the next topic, and that is gear. So you know what kind of hikes you want to do. You know that your dog wants to get started too. The next thing is, before you can walk out the door, you need to take a couple things with you. Just like when you go for a hike, you take the 10 essentials, your dog also needs their own gear. Now, the very first thing that you're going to need before you walk out the door is the same as the very first thing you need before you walk out the door to go anywhere with your dog, and that's a collar and a leash. So, you know, that should kind of go without saying, but make sure your dog has a collar on with tags preferably. You know, my dogs don't wear collars in the house, but I do have like travel collars for them with up-to-date information on it. So that way if they get lost, you know, hopefully that never happens, but someone can help track them down. I also have it on there that they're chipped, that way they know they can scan them too. There's plenty of different leash options. I personally use a British slip lead, but you could also just use like a regular clip leash like this. Preferably make sure that it's a leash that's 6 feet. Sometimes it's nice to use a long line if you're training recall, but to start out, I mean, just a regular 6-foot leash is fine. Make sure though to stay away from these flexi leashes. These really are not good for hiking for a variety of reasons, just because your dog is not always under control. They can get wrapped around stuff, give you rope burn, it can break, all sorts of reasons. So stay away from this, but any sort of other regular 6-foot leash is a really good start, along with a collar. Now, along with that, there's a lot of people that use harnesses when they go hiking. So there's a lot of different harnesses out on the market. Personally, I would stay away from no pull because that restricts their movement. And another thing to consider is that harnesses typically encourage your dog to pull. So if you have a problem with that, I would maybe stay away from a harness, but that's just my own opinion. You know, do what works for you. So here's like an example of one. Maybe you are interested in doing like a hands-free system and you want your dog to pull you, then, you know, this is like an Alaska, it's a taiga mushing harness that I found for my dog at the thrift store because I live in Alaska, so you find that kind of thing here. Personally though, I don't really use harnesses a whole lot. They're kind of nice occasionally just to give your dog an extra help up, but again, it's kind of up to you. So along with collar, leash, and possibly harness, the other thing you're gonna need no matter where you go, whether it's just for a short 30-minute walk or, you know, the longest backpacking trip you can imagine, are poop bags. These are super important. I'm about to make a video about this. That'll be out in the next couple weeks about what your options are as far as picking up poop, but you should always have bags no matter what you choose to do. Personally, I use these like green eco bags that decompose a lot faster. I also just happen to live near the ocean, so it's something that's important to me, but you can find, you know, poop bags at any store. So just make sure you have some. I keep some in my backpack, in my bag, and my dog's pack if she's carrying one, and the car, and like all my jackets. So just make sure you always have poop bags with you. So the next thing that I carry on most of my hikes, so if my walk is going to be any longer than maybe an hour or two, or I guess 2 or 3 miles, depending on how hot it is, I always bring some sort of bowl and water. So there's plenty of collapsible dog bowls on the market. I use these like felt ones I use these collapsible ones that you can find at almost any pet store, you know, Petco, whatever, probably even REI. It's just my preference. You can also find ones that are like silicone that collapse. There's like tons of ones. I really would like to get these ones that are made out of Dyneema that are more ultralight, but you can even just use some sort of like chicken container from KFC or from other fast food restaurants. That works too. There's plenty of things that you can use. The nice thing too is they double for food if you're backpacking. I use it for both, but definitely carry that for water. And then my dogs have their own water bottle, and the reason why is because I have spent most of my life hiking in very arid places like Colorado and the Southwest, and so when I pour water into their bowl, if they don't drink it all, I want to be able to pour it back without being super gross because I'm sharing water. So they have their own water bottle. That way I can conserve as much as possible. And it's just a good idea to carry that. Even if you go somewhere that's really wet, you never know, you know, if you're going to get stuck or have to wait somewhere for a while. It's just, you know, it's part of your 10 essentials. And so you want to make sure you carry that for your dog as well. And along with that, you know, when you're packing your 10 essentials, I would encourage you to think about how you can adapt your 10 essentials for your dog. And if there's anything you can change because it won't work if you have your dog with you. So as far as like shelter, you know, do you think you need maybe an extra treat or food for your dogs? You know, bringing training treats is a very good idea, especially when you're first getting started, to reinforce those good behaviors. Do you need any extra layers, that kind of thing? It'll depend really on where you're hiking and on your own individual dog. But again, I would really encourage you to think about how you might adapt the things that you're carrying for you and add it for your dog in case of an emergency. So along with that, there are some things that I don't take necessarily on every hike, but I do carry them depending on the time of the year, where I'm hiking, that sort of thing. Some of these are more for backpacking, but I might carry them for a day hike as well. So I did forget to say, as far as like first aid, I also carry specific dog first aid items that I know how to use. That's super important. So I carry stuff to wrap their paws or any other piece of their body that gets injured, like a tail or an ear or something, as part of my first aid kit. Yeah, so it's part of my bigger first aid kit. So an optional item that you might want to add as part of your first aid kit, or just because maybe your dog has much more sensitive paws because they pink pads, or you're hiking somewhere new, like a volcanic area, is dog booties. So mine are pretty beat up just from this summer, and I really need to get some new ones. I just haven't needed them yet, so I haven't gotten any yet. But I do usually just carry some in case of an emergency, especially for like hot roads and stuff. Really, it's better to try to avoid dog booties if you can. Most of the time they're more trouble than they're worth, as I can tell you from my own experiences, but it's kind of nice to have as just a backup. That way you're never getting a pickle where you wish you had them and you don't. You might also consider, for Paw Care, carrying some sort of muster secret, especially if you're going to do bigger trips. Really, I think I might be moving away from using this in the future just based off of some more recent research, but I'll probably still carry it just in case. You can use it, especially if you live in a place where you have pretty deep winter, like here in Alaska, and they put rock salt on the road to help protect their pads, and it also helps keep their pads from cracking. So it's just like any sort of paw wax. Be sure it's actual wax and not like petroleum jelly or something. Don't use that because they'll just make it soft. So I do have 2 items that I carry based off of whether it's winter or summer sometimes. The first is a sweater. So I do, for my smaller dog, often carry a sweater or put it on her in the winter just because she's smaller. She's a bigger surface area to volume ratio, so she gets cold much easier than my big dog, and so it's just something I carry that makes her much happier, especially for like winter camping. The other one is the opposite. So if you're going to be hiking somewhere that's pretty hot, especially hot and dry, then maybe consider carrying a cooling pad. This is a Roughwear Swamp Cooler that I use in summer. Is not always as helpful as it could be, but it's kind of nice to just have in your kit just in case. The other thing that you might consider carrying, although I think it's less necessary for day hiking than maybe backpacking, would be a pack to put on your dog. So this is Prima's. You can see it's gotten a lot of use. So I actually mostly almost use it more for day hikes than backpacking. She doesn't do well with weight over long distances, but it's nice on a day hike because I can have her carry her poop and Skittles poop, so I don't have to carry it in my backpack. So, you know, it's an option. It has a harness with it too, which is kind of nice. So, I know, maybe if your dog has lots of extra energy to burn and you don't have enough time to get out all the time, having them carry a weighted pack could be a really great way for them, to train and also burn more energy. And then the last thing is, you know, you're out there to have fun. Some dogs really love to play. So if you have a dog that loves balls or toys, carry a toy with you or have them carry it. I do that a lot. You know, I don't have dogs that are quite as over the top about toys, but Prima does really like fluffy toys, right, Prima? So sometimes it can be really fun to bring it and throw it for them on their breaks and that kind of thing, and just let them run around and have a good time with it. So I've talked about what kind of dog you have, where you're hiking, gear. Now you're probably thinking it's time to get out and hit the trail, and you would be pretty much right. But before you can get all the way out there, there's one last thing that you should really think pretty hard about, and that's training. So again, like I said, that before you leave the house to go anywhere, you need a leash and collar. The first thing with training before you can go anywhere is having a dog that can walk nicely on a leash. Now this is important for multiple reasons, just because when you're hiking, you're out on paths that are usually a lot trickier to walk on than it is on just, you know, your standard sidewalk. So making sure your dog can walk nicely on those trails will go a long way to keeping you safe and also to keeping your dog safe. So, and the reason I say that is if you think about, you know, walking with lots of rocks, walking on ice, and those kinds of things, other dogs, bikes, horses, whatever. You want to have a dog that's not going to drag you down, that's going to pull you at the wrong time and cause you to twist an ankle, is not going to drag you up to another horse and scare it off the trail, any of those things, right? So making sure that your dog can walk nicely goes a really long way to helping you have an enjoyable hiking experience. The next kind of thing is also, you know, a rather basic thing to train, but that's making sure that your dog has a stop. And by stop, I mean any sort of sit, down, or stand command that they will take reliably from any distance. Now that might seem like a lot or pretty overwhelming for some of you, and that one's maybe not quite as make or break as walking on a leash, but I still think it's pretty important because if your dog gets away from you, yeah, anything like that, especially near a road or wildlife, if you can tell them to lie down and they'll listen, that's going to be very valuable for you to make sure that your dog stays safe.
Prima, come. There, sit. Sit.
Along with that, having a good recall is another good way to maybe circumvent that. So I would say walking on leash and either a stop or a recall are like the two non-negotiables. So when you call your dog, they come back to you automatically. It's super important.
Prima, come on. Yes, good dog.
The nice thing is the recall and the stop are really helpful in other situations, like if you want to get them on a rock to take a picture, call them to you to get a better picture, you know, all sorts of things. They're just really helpful to have. And then the last two are commands that you maybe don't need. It's just kind of, you know, might make your life easier as you are doing a lot of hiking over time. And that's a go on command to tell them to keep walking out in front of you and not stop to sniff or eat or say hi to other people. And then the second one would be with me, and I use that a lot, especially with my dogs on and off leash, and that's to basically walk behind me and, you know, kind of stay out of the way so I can keep them with me that way. It's a little different than heel. Heel is like when they're next to you. With me is I want them behind me, that way I can fend off anything else, that kind of thing, or get out of the way. Maybe like an up command if you want them to jump up on something would also be helpful. But those are the kind of commands that I teach when I'm hiking. And the nice thing is you can do a lot of those like out in the field, but maybe think about starting a foundation at home, especially if you have a puppy, and then always continue to work on those every time you go out. Okay, so the next thing I kind of mentioned earlier on in the video, and that's conditioning of your dog, which has to do with their fitness level. So if you have a dog that is not currently doing other activities that are high energy activities such as agility or sheep herding or anything like that, then you might want to start slow. And this is true if you are also just getting started hiking, but you know, take it slow. Start out with low mile hikes with low elevation gain that are a bit more mild so they can get used to things and so they can toughen up their pads, build muscle, and just get in shape, right? So just like you wouldn't be expected to go out and run an ultra marathon if you've never even run a mile in your life, you wouldn't expect your dog to do the same. So you want to take it slow. It'll give them a better hiking experience, and you'll be less likely to have problems or injuries on the trail. And this is really the most important if you're the kind of person that's very interested in getting out and doing these really big, epic activities like lots of peak bagging or long distance hiking and that kind of thing, especially if you've been doing it for a long time and you just got a dog, is remember to slow down. You want to think about the long term. This is a marathon, this whole training and hiking with dogs thing, so you want to start slow and build them up over time. Okay, so this next one is really important, and I don't see nearly enough of this, although most people are pretty good, but there are definitely the bad eggs out there that ruin this for everyone, and that's to be courteous. So when you're out hiking with dogs, whether you hike alone or you're just getting started, you want to remember that you're not the only one out there. So we want to make sure that we are preserving everything so that others can enjoy nature the way we saw it, and we can continue to come back and enjoy it the way we saw it for years to come. We want to make sure that we're not ruining other people's trail experience. You know, other people are out there too to have a good time and enjoy nature and leave behind all their worries. And so you don't want to be letting your dog run up to them, bother them, steal their food. Same thing if they have their own dog and you want yours to say hi, please always ask. Not all dogs are friendly. And even if they are friendly, maybe they have some sort of medical condition or something like that where they don't want to say hi. And then, you know, along with that too, make sure you're always picking up your dog poop. Make sure you never let your dogs chase wildlife. That's just all very courteous, following that leave no trace and making sure that everyone has a good time. And you know, we all make mistakes for sure. I mean, my dogs aren't perfect. We've certainly had our days where, you know, things just don't go right. So don't, you know, if something happens, just take it in stride, but do your best to kind of be aware of everyone around you and make sure that you're not just oblivious to everything else going on. And then the last thing is to end on a good note, and that's to have fun, right? Like, we're all out there to have a good time with our dogs and see them have a good time. I mean, there's really nothing better than being out in nature, seeing your dogs having a good time, enjoying beautiful views, and the quiet and the peace it has to offer. It really just doesn't get much better than that. So at the end of the day, you know, we all start somewhere. As long as you can kind of start it with these couple action items I gave you and build from there, then you're going to have a grand time. So make sure to smile and have a wonderful time. So that's all I have for today. If this video has been helpful for you, please let me know by hitting that like button. And then if you want to see more of these videos again, be sure to subscribe. And then finally, I do want to let you know that I did just recently write an ebook on backpacking with dogs. And while you might be thinking I'm not even ready anywhere close to being ready to backpack with my dog, most of the tips that I have in there are also relevant to hiking with dogs and go into more depth of what I talked about today. So I will put the link down in the description below. Otherwise, I hope to see you guys later and have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you on trails.